The Cold War series. The Iron Curtain. How Europe was divided. Episode 2. The Second World War had ended, but peace brought no comfort. Across Europe, victory gave way to fear. A new shadow stretched from the Baltic to the Balkans. A shadow that Winston Churchill would call the Iron Curtain. Join us as we uncover 7 defining chapters in the Cold War. A struggle that changed history without a single direct battle. 1. The aftermath of war. By 1945, Europe was in ruins. Cities lay in ashes, economies collapsed, and millions were homeless. The continent that once ruled the world now depended on the mercy of 2 powers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Both had fought side by side to defeat Nazi Germany. But now, their visions for the post-war world could not have been more different. 2. Stalin's expansion and the birth of the Eastern Bloc. In the East, Joseph Stalin moved quickly to secure his influence. He installed communist governments loyal to Moscow in Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and East Germany. The Soviet Union called it liberation. The West called it occupation. Behind these new borders, the press was censored, elections were controlled, and opposition was silenced. Stalin's goal was clear: to create a wall of friendly nations, protecting the Soviet Union from any future invasion. 3. Churchill's warning. The Iron Curtain speech. In March of 1946, Winston Churchill delivered a speech in Fulton, Missouri. His words echoed across the world. From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. It was more than a metaphor. It was the birth of a divided world, East and West, communist and capitalist, Soviet and American. 4. The West responds. Containment and reconstruction. In 1947, President Harry Truman announced his policy of containment, promising to resist Soviet expansion wherever it appeared. That same year, Secretary of State George Marshall proposed a plan to rebuild Europe's shattered economies. The Marshall Plan offered billions of dollars in aid, but only to countries willing to cooperate with the West. Nations that accepted American aid prospered. Those that refused under Soviet pressure fell further behind. The divide between East and West was no longer just political. It was economic, cultural, and deeply human. 5. Life behind the curtain. Behind the Iron Curtain, life was ruled by fear and control. The secret police watched everyone. Dissent meant prison or worse. But there was also pride. Pride in rebuilding, in equality, in being part of a powerful socialist bloc. Meanwhile, in the West, freedom brought its own struggle, prosperity mixed with paranoia and the constant fear of communist infiltration. 6. Berlin, the city at the heart of the divide. Nowhere symbolized the division of Europe more clearly than Berlin. Though located deep within East Germany, the city was split into 4 zones: American, British, French, and Soviet. In 1948, Stalin tried to force the Allies out by cutting off all supplies to West Berlin. But the Western powers answered with a remarkable act of defiance: the Berlin Airlift. For 11 months, from 1948 to 1949, Allied planes delivered food, coal, and hope to the people of West Berlin. Stalin eventually lifted the blockade, humiliated, but not defeated. 7. 2 Europe, 2 futures. In 1949, the Western nations formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, known as NATO, a military alliance to defend against Soviet aggression. In response, 6 years later, in 1955, the Soviet Union created the Warsaw Pact, uniting its satellite states under Moscow's command. Europe was now armed to the teeth, a continent divided by ideology, defended by fear, and separated by barbed wire. The Iron Curtain was more than a line on a map. It was a wound cutting through nations, cities, and hearts. For nearly half a century, it would define the lives of millions. Behind it, the Cold War would spread to Asia, Africa, and beyond. A struggle not for land, but for the soul of the modern world. Subscribe for Episode 3, Nuclear Standoff. The Age of Mad, Mutually Assured Destruction. The Cold War Series USA versus USSR. 40 years that changed the world.